We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully your day is going well. It is Thursday. Had a lot of court cases and things going on, so we've got a lot to talk about. I will tell you this up front. Nothing that went on yesterday or all this week has been a positive for Donald Trump. Here's a motherfucker that keeps on losing and isn't going to stop losing until he falls completely off the fucking cliff. There was an interesting story about Hunter Biden. Now, you know, there was a guy that investigated him for 5 years. His name is David Weiss. And because the Republicans were complaining about why doesn't he have a special counsel? So then Merrick Garland named David Weiss the special counsel to look into Hunter Biden. And then all of a sudden, the Republicans were angry about that. Oh, the fix is in. You can't make those motherfuckers happy. They are always feeling like they are being slighted. So anyway, some news came out today, and I got to have a feeling that the Republicans are a little giddy about that. Apparently, David Weiss, the special counsel, now looking into Hunter Biden's criminal activity, if there was any, is said that he's going to convene a grand jury by the end of September. That should be good news, right? The only thing about it is that this is going to be a problem for the DOJ, for the special counsel, David Weiss, because Hunter Biden and the DOJ or David Weiss had a signed agreement for Hunter Biden to plead out. Both sides signed. So now they're going to go to trial. I heard a lawyer that represents Hunter Biden on a television show, and this guy seems very sharp. I think when it's all said and done, Hunter's probably not going to do too badly in this situation, but who really knows? But as I say, I'm guessing the Republicans are giddy about this. Oh, yeah, we finally got him. We're going to expose everything. But of course, Democrats, their attitude is a little different. It's like, well, great. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. You've investigated this guy for 5 years. You're going to go to a grand jury. Now, this isn't a trial. This is a grand jury to decide whether to indict Hunter Biden. So what happens when you go to the grand jury? And a good lawyer for Hunter Biden says, look, they've investigated this guy for 5 years, found nothing, and now they want to put it in front of a grand jury. I heard somebody talking, the lawyer, I think, said the only way this makes any sense is if there is a change in the law or a change in the facts. Otherwise, it should stay the same as what it was. Makes sense. There was no change in the facts. They are all still the same facts that brought David Weiss around to the idea of charging him with a couple of minor or misdemeanor tax charges. And then there's this gun charge. The gun charge, everybody on the Republican side thought should be more serious. It's interesting coming from the Republicans. As far as I know about the Republicans, they think everybody should have a gun, no matter what, no matter where, whether they're on drugs, whether they have a record. It doesn't fucking matter, but not in this case with Hunter Biden. But something interesting happened since all this started. The law that they want to prosecute Hunter Biden for with regards to the gun just this past year was presented at the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court found it to be unconstitutional. This is weird. Why would you bring a guy to court to try to prosecute him on something when you know this has already been decided to be unconstitutional? That's fucking stupid. And like this lawyer said on television, this isn't about facts. This isn't about new evidence. This isn't about changed laws, because frankly, the changed law that was there makes a better case for Hunter Biden and makes it least likely that he would be convicted of anything. But the lawyer made a good point. This isn't about the law. It isn't about facts. It's about politics, and it's about Republicans pressuring this special counsel and or Merrick Garland to push the issue here. That's what it's about. Now, Hunter Biden is a fuck up, or was a fuck up. I don't know. Maybe he's better now, but he was doing drugs. He had a gun. He did some crazy, stupid shit. If he was my kid, I don't know what the fuck I'd do with him, but I would have raised him better in the first place, and that wouldn't happen. So in terms of Hunter Biden, whether he gets convicted or not gets convicted, whether he goes to jail or is on probation, I don't really give a fuck. And I don't think any of you do either. But this is all the Republicans have to use against Joe Biden going into 2024. That gives you a sense of how desperate these fucks are and how little they have to work with. So we'll see. The grand jury is going to convene toward the end of the month. They'll put on their case, and we'll see if Hunter Biden gets indicted. I have a feeling he might not get indicted because, as I've said, he's been investigated for 5 years by this same guy, and this same guy said, here's the deal. This is what we can get him on. The only reason he's doing this grand jury is to appease Republicans. And that's bullshit, but I don't care. You know, that's the thing the Republicans want. They want us to be upset, incensed that we have the audacity to investigate and indict Hunter Biden. But in the scheme of things, I don't fucking care. Doesn't matter to anybody. So anyway, that's what's going on with Hunter Biden. Not really an important news story at this stage, but it is a news story nonetheless, and we're all curious as to what's happening. Now, you remember I had a number of emails yesterday. I caught up with them, but we got a bunch more today. Some came in yesterday and today, so we're going to get to them. This one comes from Karen. She says, why do the Christian radicals support Trump? Are they not against all the things that are sins Trump's guilty of? Examples: lies, theft, cheating, rape, womanizing, unfaithful in marriage, embezzlement, causing death to many citizens due to his lack of care and policies during the COVID pandemic, and many more things I'm not aware of. Now that I think of it, how could anyone, unless they're like-minded? My wife and I discussed this. We both follow you every day, hope to hear from you. We both read lots of writings of Heather Cox, history professor, Joyce Vance, lawyer, great lady, great legal mind. Here to help with legal aspects of upcoming trials will be helpful. Check them out. Your friends, Jim and Karen. Well, I've checked both of them out, and they are great sources. I look at them regularly. But your question is, why do Christian radicals support Trump? I'll be perfectly honest with you. I think one of the biggest problems we have in politics today is the fact that religion is involved. There should be a separation of church and state. I believe that's in the Constitution, but for whatever reason, these radical right Christians think they should control this country. Now, every time a religious entity has controlled a country, it's always turned disastrous. Now, why are they willing to accept Donald Trump's lies, theft, cheating, rape, womanizing, all of that? It's because they only care about one thing. They can justify all those things if they can get the one thing that's most important to them, and that's overturning Roe v. Wade, which they essentially got. They're willing to put up with Donald Trump's transgressions for the greater good, at least in their minds. But if they're willing to do that, that doesn't suggest to me that they're very credible in terms of their religious beliefs. See, that's one of the things about religion. Religion is a good thing if it sticks to what it's supposed to be. Unfortunately, where religion gets messed up is by the intervention of humans. Humans are fallible. Humans are sinners. Humans are all about power and money. And when you get in that mindset where you're looking for power and money, you can rationalize anything. I saw that in my business. You know, I'd have a deal with somebody and they'd try to slight me somehow, and then they would rationalize it. Unfortunately, when they did that to me, it didn't go so well because I wasn't hearing that shit. I straightened them out, or I never dealt with them again. And it's the same with religions. Almost any club, you get somebody with a little bit of power and maybe generating some money. They feel like they're above it all and they can do whatever the fuck they want, and then they justify it. Religion in this country is problematic. Now, I can't say all religions are bad. I'm not going to suggest that. If you're in a religion, you go to church regularly, it makes you feel good and it makes you feel right with the Lord. By all means, keep doing it. That's what belief or faith is all about. It's about making you feel better, more just, whatever. And if that's going to church, then do it. But if you are going to take advantage of people and worry about power and money and scandal and gossip and all that stuff, you're not really in church. You're not there for the right reason. So what I'm saying is you can be somebody who doesn't go to church and be more devout, more faithful than somebody who goes to church. It's not about the club you're in. It's about what you feel in your heart and your mind, and if you have compassion and if you care about people. When we look at the evangelicals and the things they talk about, clearly they don't care about all people. They only care about themselves. And I don't know what God they studied, but in my mind, that isn't what God was teaching. But they will justify it. And then they throw out their love of God in their own way as if it trumps, pun not intended, trumps everything else. It doesn't matter whether I'm being truthful or whether I'm right. I'm doing it for God. So that brings it above everything else. And that's what kind of irritates me. All right. Well, thank you, Jim and Karen, for that email. This next one comes from a woman by the name of Ebony. She says, "Hello, Mike. I'm a long-time listener, and I'm so grateful for you and your calm, logical takes on the events that has everyone's attention and concern. I'm a Gen Xer, 1976. Just for comparison's sakes, 1976, I started driving. I was a junior in high school. No, I was a sophomore in high school, and Ebony was born. In fact, Ebony is the child of boomer parents. She says, I hear a lot of their wisdom when you speak, and like them, you put things in perspective and makes me feel better about where this country is headed. As a Black woman living in Chicago, who only recently got involved with politics, I learn a lot from you and your guest, especially appreciated hearing from Old Soul, and would absolutely love to hear more from her. I have a feeling Old Soul's going to be back. A lot of people felt that way. She gave me the courage to finally write you. And maybe one day I'll be brave enough to actually do a show if you're ever so inclined to have me. Until then, keep cussing and being you, because you truly are absolutely amazing." Well, thank you very much, Ebony. And I'm always inclined to have guests, and certainly you are more than welcome anytime. What are you doing tomorrow? No, Ebony, don't sit and wait and think if you're going to be good enough to be on the show. You're already good enough. You're a listener. You send an email. You're ready, Ebony. Send me an email. Tell me you want to do it, and we'll get it set up. All right, the next email. Good morning, Mike. Hopefully it's still morning there. If not, please make it good whenever it is. I hope you're doing fine, and by now you have done all the work needed to prepare yourself for the lovely winter in Minnesota. Perhaps I should not have reminded you of winter, because I know, like me, you are not a fan of winter. Not a fan of winter. I don't like cold weather, and I don't like excessive snow. I told my wife yesterday, she says, I say, you know what? I love September and October. The fall in Minnesota is beautiful. but it's a lot like a Sunday. Sundays are great days, but if you're in your years while you're working, Sundays are great days, but you're always thinking, yeah, fuck tomorrow, I got to go to work. And it's the same with September and October in Minnesota. Beautiful. The colors are wonderful. The weather is nice. But I'm going to have to bring the boat back in mid-October and the shit's going to get cold and the snow is around the corner. So it's kind of hard to appreciate Minnesota when you've got that hanging in the back of your mind. Anyway, now they go on to say, I'm writing to ask you to please, if you can explain why when oil prices go up outside of the United States, U.S. oil companies feel obligated to raise their price in sympathy. When you tell these motherfuckers that since the U.S. is now close to 100% self-sufficient in oil production, fuck OPEC, fuck Russia, keep the price low here for Americans. They say, no, it doesn't work that way. Since OPEC cut production and raised the price, we have no choice but to raise our prices too. They tell us to blame the high price on OPEC. But if we say, then let's treat everything else, including the price of prescription medicine for Americans, the same way based on international market, their answer is, oh no, we can't do that. If we make you pay what another country like wealthy Netherlands pays for the same medicine, that will severely damage innovations and causes us not to be able to save your life. These motherfuckers want to have it both ways. The oil that is produced in America for Americans must follow the high international price, but price of medicine must be set separately and much higher than the rest of the world. In conclusion, fuck OPEC, fuck Russia. Last but not least, fuck oil companies. Please keep the podcast coming fast and furious. I can't make it without them. Sincerely, Joe. Well, what you've just outlined there is really the problem, and it's called corporate greed. They will tell you, it's much like what I was saying with the evangelicals. They will fuck you over and then they will justify it. And they expect you to believe it. It's much like what they told us about the trickle-down theory 40 years ago. It's what they tell us currently, and they've told us all 40 years. They keep fucking us over. They tell us the same thing. And some people believe it. See, that's what we've got to do. We've got to be able to apply some pressure. You said something about us being 100% non-dependent on outside oil. I don't know that's true. I'm not an expert on that. We'll have to talk to Mr. Global about that. If you're on TikTok, he's an oil expert. But it's always been that way. I mean, what does Saudi Arabia do and OPEC do when the prices start going down? They cut production to artificially raise the value of oil. It's all about supply and demand. And if the demand goes down, they cut oil production, certainly. But sometimes when it's just the price is too low, they say, fuck it, we'll cut it and we'll raise it up. Now, if you're old enough, I don't know if you are, Joe, but if you go back to the 70s, when I first started driving, we had an oil or energy crisis. At that time, they were telling us, oh man, we're running out of oil by 2000. There'll be no oil, then we'll be fucked. There was a shortage and we were paying ridiculous amounts of money for gas. But not even that. What was also happening is there was some rationing going on as far as gas being put out just to sell this idea that there's a shortage. And so there would be these long lines at gas stations trying to get $5 of gas. You would be limited as to how much you could get. There would be these long lines, and it wouldn't be unusual to sit there for an hour, hour and a half waiting to get gas. And then when you got up there, it might be out. And now you're fucked. You got no gas. You've been sitting there for an hour and you got no place to go. The only thing you can do is go to another gas station, stand in line for a while, and then hope against hope that there'll still be gas when you get up to it. My point is, when all that was going on and they were telling us there's going to be a shortage of gas, here we are in 2023, and guess what? There's no shortage in gas. There never was any shortage in gas. What we have going on here, Joe, is people lying to us so they can grift more money from us. And that is absolutely a problem. So what do? Well, once we get this 2024 election behind us and we finally get some power in the House and in the Senate and in the Oval Office, we need to keep pushing. I've talked to people about this before. People have said, Mike, when Donald Trump goes to jail and everybody, the Republicans are in jail, then you'll have nothing to talk about. That's not true. This country wasn't running to its optimal level prior to Donald Trump. I mean, it wasn't as bad as what Donald Trump did to it, but we had the things we needed to fix. And the Democrats are just as culpable as the Republicans prior to 2015. We need to take this experience we have now where we're loud and proud and keep pushing back right now against Republicans. But we've got to keep this attitude. We've got to keep the young people invigorated and get them to understand that they're deciding what their destiny is going to be. So even when the era of Donald Trump and the Trump-lefucks is long gone, we still need to be this strong voice talking to whoever's in power at that point, whether it be Democrat or Republican, and forcing this shit down their throat. The reason we are the way we are or where we are right now is because of apathy. I was guilty of it. Almost everybody was guilty of it. We sat back and said, well, the government will handle it. Well, they handled it all right, but they fucked us over in the process on many levels, whether it be corporate greed, whether it be the bills that were passed, whether it be the loose gun laws. It wasn't just the Republicans that allowed the loose gun laws. It wasn't just the Republicans that allowed healthcare to get out of hand like it is. And it wasn't just the Republicans that caused college prices to go up so high. The Democrats had their part in it too. They are the lesser of two evils right now. But as I've always said, this isn't a fight between Democrats and Republicans. This is a fight between them, meaning the politicians, and us. They've taken our power away from us. They do what they fucking want to do, and that has to stop. And the only way we can stop it is if we push back and fight back. And now that we're kind of in the mix with the Republicans, we have to realize that once that is over, we can't sit on our laurels. We've got to continue fighting fucking back against politicians and government in general to finally get what we deserve as opposed to whatever crumbs they want to fucking give us. All right. Thank you, Joe. We got another email. It says, hello, Mike. Loved all the podcasts with guests. Love the conversations and the input. I also want to thank Old Soul for the email that explained how we are feeling after Trump took our security and wreaked havoc on this country. Her words were so healing and on point. I'm writing today to bring up something I'm concerned about. All over news networks and now TikTok, I keep hearing about the 14th Amendment can be used by secretaries of state to block Trump from being on the ballot. This gives me concern because we don't have a conviction yet. Don't we have to wait for that first? No, we don't. There doesn't have to be any convictions. There doesn't even have to be any trial. If it's apparent he broke or he violated the 14th Amendment, theoretically, secretaries of state can take him off the ballot. Right now, there's a lot going on. There are lawsuits in Arizona and Michigan and California and other places around the country. These lawsuits will be filed, and theoretically, it could work. There is some momentum being made in these actions. And we know it's getting to Donald Trump because Donald Trump is going on Truth Social and talking specifically about this. So there is movement, there is momentum. Whether it will work or not, I don't know. But at this point, we try anything. The emailer goes on to say, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not making certain statements. It just doesn't sound right. The idea that one individual from a state can make the decision to leave out a person out of the ballot, even when it's one of the worst human beings, just doesn't sound right. We have to remember that this idea originated from conservative scholars, and me personally, I don't trust Republicans. They always have ulterior motives. They want Trump out of the way because they know he's dead weight for their party. We know the Republican Secretary of States are not going to do this, so this puts it on the shoulders of the Democratic ones. I am in a swing state, and we happen to have a Democratic Secretary of State, and I just don't know how something like that will go over with moderate Republicans and independents that vote in my state. You know, Republicans would retaliate and just accuse Democrats of claiming inflammatory language that incites violence or incitement against Republicans. We all know they are the ones that incite and inflame, but we know how they like to lie to their base and rile them up. I just don't like so many on the left are touting this and getting so excited about it when we don't know if it's possible. I saw so many TikToks from large creators, and it just gives me concern. What are your thoughts regarding this? Thanks, Viv or V. Well, first of all, V, I will tell you this, and I've told you fuckers this many times. Don't come at this shit with negative attitudes. You're just bringing that energy to you. Can it work? Yeah, it can work. That's why it was put in the Constitution. Will it work? Who knows? And I'm not really concerned about whether it will work or not, because I don't think we need to do that to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office. Donald Trump is becoming buried in all kinds of shit. To be honest with you, whether they go to the secretaries of state or not, and whether they take him off the ballot, I don't really care. The fact that it's happening, it's in the narrative, is going to weigh heavily on Donald Trump, along with 4 indictments, 91 felony charges. All this shit is going to take him out of the equation. He's not going to be able to handle it. You're right about one thing. Republicans do want to get rid of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a fucking loser, and he's going to sink the Republican Party. And while the MAGA fucks don't know it, everybody else, all the other Republicans do know it. But I'm all for it. Let them do what they will do. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, I don't really care, because there's so much other shit that's going to take Donald Trump down. I'm really not worried about the future of Donald Trump. Fact of the matter is, I've told you, and I will stand by it, that Donald Trump will not only not be the nominee, but he won't run in the November election. He's going to be so, what's the word I'm looking for? He's going to be so crippled by all that's going on that he won't be able to do shit. He's done. And let's just say the worst happens. He becomes the nominee and he runs in the 2024 general election. He can't fucking win. In fact, if he does become the candidate for the Republican Party, it's like a gift to the Democrats. V, I would say don't worry about these little things, all these things going on. Don't worry about Republicans retaliating. They've done that for 6 fucking years and beyond, and we're still here, right? But after 2024, if everything happens the way I think it's going to happen, they won't have any power to do anything. They'll be running around like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to figure out how to become relevant again. Don't worry about that. They're not going to incite violence. These fucking Republicans are cowards. Nobody's going to get violent. Don't look at these little individual things. Don't look at one court case over all the rest. It's the cumulative actions that are happening that are going to take down Donald Trump and the Republicans. And it will happen. I promise you that. It's going to happen. It can't go any other way. There is nothing positive for the Republicans now. They don't have anything to run on, and they don't have any hope of getting anywhere. Okay, now I got to move on because Viv wrote a second email. She says, "Hi, Mike. Sorry for the second email, but I needed to include another thing. Did you happen to hear about how Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, would not meet with Joe Biden when he visited Florida to assess the damages for the latest hurricane? Talk about petty. These pathetic Republican leaders can't even put politics aside to represent their people. He should be the voice of people of Florida, but this coward would not even show up in fear of his dumbass base. Leaders like him don't want help to help or govern. They're just there for power, hate, and division." Ron DeSantis is a fucking coward. Sure, he's worried about the base standing next to Joe Biden. He's also worried about the wrath of Donald Trump. He sees Ron DeSantis standing next to Joe Biden, shaking his hand or whatever. Now he's going to be ranting like crazy about this. I don't know why Ron DeSantis would worry about it. He's all but sunk his attempt to be the nominee. He has no chance either. But it's all about cowardice. That's what it's about. Uncle Joe was there to help. Why is Ron so afraid of Uncle Joe? At least Voldemort, aka Ron Scott or Rick Scott, showed up. While these coward Republicans are playing politics, Democratic governors are coming through for their people. My governor just signed the highest budget for education, ensuring public school students get free breakfast and lunch. She's also investing into infrastructure by fixing the damn roads, her words, also protecting women's rights to health care, expanding voting rights, and many more. Why can't people in red states realize their leaders aren't doing crap for them? I hope we can do what my governor is doing nationally. I hope Democrats win in the next election so we can put this country in the right, actually the left track. Thanks, Viv. There's one word in that last paragraph, Viv, that I would admonish you for. You say, I hope we can do that, do what my governor's doing nationally. I hope Democrats win. It's no way to talk, Viv. We can do what your governor did. My governor in Minnesota did some fucking amazing things. And you say you hope the Democrats are going to win? Bet the house on it. The Democrats are going to win. There is no way they can lose. There is no path for the Republicans to win. There's nothing they've accomplished, nothing that they've done. They can't win any more than they could have gotten that red wave in the midterms. All right, thanks, Viv. 2 emails. You're working overtime up in here. All right, the next one comes from apparently a fan favorite, Old Soul. And actually, Old Soul is responding to a request I gave to her because somebody in an email asked for it. She says, "Hey, Boomer, I rarely experience a loss for words, but the feedback from the podcast has left me speechless. I would like to say thank you to the Boomer community. I'm appreciative of the kind words and encouragement. Below is the information in regards to abortion care." You'll remember that she was talking about that, and she's very adamant about it, and she donates her time to help women in red states that need help in order to get this health care. And somebody asked for the information that she gave on the podcast when she was on. I'm going to give it to you here. Now remember, this is recorded, so if you say, "Oh, I missed it," you can just rewind a little bit and do it again. But if you still can't get it, email me and I'll get you the information. Anyway, she says, first of all, it's the National Abortion Federation. It's www.prochoice.org, spelled out lowercase, prochoice.org. The number is 1-800-772-9100, 1-800-772-9100. Now, she also said to volunteer, go to prochoice.org. On the top right, click the 3 lines, join NAF community, fill out the information and go from there. They'll see what help is needed in your area. She says, I know it's a scary time for girls and women who feel they have no options, but they do. People care. I know because I'm only one of many who care. The American people will not continue to stand by and watch our daughters, sisters, friends, partners, cousins, and wives continue to suffer in this way. 425 days until 2024's election. The Republican Party has another 425 days to live high off the hog, as my grandmother would say. In 425 days, they'll find out what happens when they fuck around and the safety and lives of women in this country. 76% of Americans want the right to choose. That's the single issue conservatives, independents, and Democrats can all agree on. MAGA Republicans may be the loudest and most annoying voices in the room, but they are in the minority. Girls and women who are afraid, don't be. There are HIPAA laws. Your privacy will be maintained and protected. Please seek safe medical care. Back alley care can lead to future complications. Your safety and mental well-being is a top priority. Thanks, Boomer, old soul. There she did it again. Inspiring, folks. So that's the information that some of you asked for. If you need it more, just rewind and listen again, or send me an email and I'll make sure you get the information. All right, we are going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. We are back, second half of the Rational Boomer podcast for September 7th. That's an important day to me, to my wife, to my family. Today is the 36th birthday of my oldest son. We're going to see him later, but the best part of going to see him is going to see my granddaughter. She is a pistol. And she likes grandma and grandpa because we let her do anything, buy her anything, and we kind of get in trouble together. I'm sure it's much to the dismay of my son. I wanted to bring something up. I haven't really talked about this, and I'm not going to go an extended period of time talking about this. But you also know I have a grandson, a step grandson. And people will ask me, why don't you ever talk about him? And I could talk a lot about him. He's a wonderful kid, a wonderful big brother. I love this kid. As far as I'm concerned, he's my real grandson. But my son and his wife are in the midst of a divorce. And because he's a stepson to my son, I don't get a chance to see him as much. And that's hard to deal with, let's be perfectly honest, because I do love that kid. And that kid is very important to my granddaughter. And I'm not sure what to do with that. We will see him at all his sporting events. We go to all the sporting events, but when it comes to family get-togethers and that sort of thing, I don't get the opportunity to see him. And that's kind of a tough thing to deal with. I mean, I understand, but it's kind of bullshit in my mind. But I'm not faulting anybody there. It's the circumstances, not any one person. Anyway, if you've been wondering about that, that's the answer. I'm not going to belabor the fact because it's none of my fucking business, to be perfectly honest with you. Anyway, well, we had some activity down in Georgia. Fulton County prosecutors revealed Wednesday that the former President Trump's election interference trial in Georgia will last an estimated 4 months, not including jury selection, with some 150 witnesses called to testify. What in the actual fuck? 150 witnesses? And you're going to do it in 4 months? That seems hard to imagine. Now, the update came during a public hearing before Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee, where prosecutors and lawyers for the 19 defendants hashed out their arguments for and against trying the group all together. I will say this about Judge Scott McAfee. He is 34 years old. He's younger than my son. He is tied to the Federalist Party or Federalist group. He's a Republican, But I got to say, he did a hell of a job. He's very straightforward. He's very tough. He seems to be fair. So I feel pretty confident in Scott McAfee as a judge for this case down in Georgia. Now, McAfee also ruled afterwards that the two defendants seeking to separate themselves from the pack, attorney Keneth Chesbro or whatever the fuck his name is, I don't care, and Sidney Powell, would be tried on October 23rd as scheduled. These are the two that want a speedy trial. Now, these two wanted to be separate from each other because what these two were involved in have no connection. I don't think they've ever met, and the things that Sidney Powell was involved in aren't the things that Keneth Chesbro was in. So they wanted to separate it. And you know how crazy this can get. First of all, it's a RICO indictment and charges. The whole point of RICO is it's a group of people working together on different things to come to the same end. So while Keneth Chesbro and Sidney Powell maybe don't know each other, they were all cogs in this whole process to overturn the election and keep Donald Trump in office. And that's what Fani Willis is essentially saying. That's why she wants to try them all at once, all 19. Frankly, I think she's just trying to apply some pressure because she knows that a few, if not several of them, are going to flip on Donald Trump. Now, the interesting thing about this, Chesbro and Sidney Powell wanted to separate it. They wanted their own lone trials. And this just doesn't make sense because Fani Willis said something that was interesting. I don't know if she meant it or she's trying to scare somebody or she's a little nuts. But she said whether it be these two defendants or all 19 or 15 more, she is going to put on the same defense for all trials. So for these two people, she's going to put on the 150 witnesses and take 4 months to do it. That sounds crazy. But I'm not a district attorney. What the fuck do I know? And she may be doing it just to try to get everybody's attention and get those people who are ready to roll on Donald Trump to fucking do it. I don't know. Now, the judge seemed a little skeptical as to whether the logistics would allow that to happen. I have a feeling, well, the other thing that was interesting is that Fani Willis threw out that October 23rd date, and that's 46 days away to start the trial. That seems crazy in its own right. But the judge did say, we're going to stick hard and fast to that October 23rd date. So at least these two are going to go to trial in 46 days. And it's going to be on TV. So this is going to be fucking interesting. Donald Trump wants to sever himself from everybody and be on his own and probably do it, in 2029. Well, that's not going to happen. We still don't know how this is all going to shake out. And what we still don't know is if Mark Meadows and a few others plan to try to get it pushed to a federal court is actually happening yet. We've had the hearings on that, but the judge has not made the decision. I expect that decision to come this week. I, in fact, expected it to come yesterday. I thought it would be quick, but it didn't come. It's got to come this week, though. Whether or not Mark Meadows and some of the others will be allowed to take their case to federal court. In all honesty, from what I've heard from legal experts, I don't think that's going to happen. And even if it did, I don't know that it makes much difference. It offers them some other options, but the facts are the facts. The evidence are the evidence. Fani Willis still would prosecute this, so they don't gain much. If nothing else, a little bit of time to delay it. Now, Mark Meadows' claim really doesn't hold much water, so I don't expect that he's going to be sent to federal court. He's certainly not going to get it dismissed. If they are going to partition all this shit up, if you're going to have 3 sets of people being tried at 3 different times, I presume that Donald Trump will be in the next group that didn't want the speedy trial, but will get there the quickest. Now, some people are suggesting that Fani Willis suggested March 4th to start the case, which is interesting because Judge Chutkan in Washington, D.C. also is talking about a March 4th start to the trial. You have to wonder if these judges aren't talking to themselves to create a stir or something. I don't know. I've never seen anything like this. That's the one thing we all have to take into consideration. What's going on now with all these cases, with all these upcoming trials, is historic. We have never seen anything like it, and we'll likely never see anything like it again, at least hopefully not. Hopefully this country has learned a lesson and we don't put ourselves through this again by making the same mistakes we made when Donald Trump was elected president. So there's still kind of a mess going on down in Georgia. We don't know what's going to happen, where it's going to happen, and how it's going to happen. Now, what you have to understand about the federal court in Fulton County, it's just right across the street from the state court. It maybe affords Meadows and some of the others a little more flexibility, but not much. They're still going to get convicted. Yeah, they might try to get it dismissed and stuff, but that's not going to happen. This is a Hail Mary pass. This is something they're trying, and I don't believe they even see that they have much hope with this thing. So we'll watch it. We'll keep you posted as to what's going on. But now we do know for sure that that the first trial is supposed to start, presumably Sidney Powell and Keneth Chesbro. The first trial will start on October 23rd, 46 days from now. Now, what there was also talk of John Eastman asking for a speedy trial, and I think what will happen if he does that, they'll just lump him in with Powell and Chesbro, which he probably won't like. Now, there might be some other speedy trials that will come up between now and the end of December. So we could have 3 sets of everything going on, but I don't think anything's going to go longer than the spring. I don't think that's going to happen, because then we're running up against the election and that would be a problem. The whole idea of Fani Willis prosecuting 19 defendants at one time seems a little nuts. I mean, just the jury selection with 19 lawyers kicking people out or wanting people in and arguing back and forth about that could be pretty extensive. And then when it comes to the witnesses, the 180 or 150 witnesses, and if every lawyer wants to cross-examine them, we've got 19 lawyers and 150 fucking witnesses. I just don't know how that's going to go. It can't go well. This will all get worked out in the wash. It will work out the way it's supposed to work out. Bottom line is Donald Trump and those people that are also guilty will be held accountable. We'll just keep a close eye on it. I'll let you know what I know when I know it. Let's go back to the classified documents case. Now, we haven't talked about it much. We know we've got that suspect judge down there, and she's fucking up a lot. I have a feeling Jack Smith is going to get her kicked out of there at some point soon. At least I hope he does. But there was a big turn of events in the Mar-a-Lago case yesterday. Mar-a-Lago employee and key witness in the classified documents case against Donald Trump has agreed to testify against the former president. Now let's look at all the players in this trial. You've got Donald Trump, number one. You've got Walton Nada, who is supposed to be Donald Trump's body man. They keep saying that. I don't know what the fuck that means. Then there's another guy named D. Oliveira, who was kind of Naughta's little buddy when they were trying to erase the surveillance video. And they went to see somebody by the name of Yusil Tavares. He was the IT guy. And they talked to him about erasing the surveillance video. Well, between the three of them, none of them could figure out how to do it. Jack Smith has the surveillance video and has the crimes on video. Now, initially, when Tavares was indicted, or at least brought up against the grand jury, he took a phrase from Schultz in Hogan's Heroes. I see nothing. I know nothing. And he just couldn't remember anything. But then the judge noticed that Tavares had a Trump paid for lawyer. And he asked Tavares, he says, do you want another lawyer? This seems like it's putting a little pressure on you. You want another lawyer? We'll get you another lawyer. And Tavares says, yeah. And once he got that other lawyer, he was no longer under the thumb of Donald Trump. He says, you know what? I had an epiphany. I'll tell you everything. And now he's agreed to testify. And why? To save his ass. He's just one little cog in this whole fucking mess, and he doesn't know how he got caught up into it. And they basically said, listen, if you testify, nothing's going to happen to you. If you don't testify, you're probably going to fucking jail. Not a real tough choice. Now, Yusil Tavares was the resort information technology worker. He had initially denied the special counsel Jack's teams that there had been any conversations. And then, as I said, when he got a new lawyer, he was out from under Donald Trump. He said, you know what? Maybe I do have something. Now, of course, Trump was charged with keeping national defense secrets, making false statements, and conspiracy to obstruct justice, among other things. His body man, Naughta, and a Mar-a-Lago employee, D. Oliveira, have also been charged. All three men are accused of trying to destroy evidence, including attempting to delete security footage off a server. And so we are going through this whole thing. And what we're going to ultimately see is going to affect Naughta, and it's also going to affect D. Oliveira. You see, the thing about it is that when Tavares decided to flip, it's obviously bad news for Donald Trump, but it's also bad news for Walt Naughta and D. Oliveira, because everything they've said will now come out to be a lie. They've got a witness saying that it's a lie, and that's not going to go over very well. So that's going to put Naughta and D. Oliveira in a tough spot. They're going to have to probably flip themselves, or they're almost assuredly going to jail because of this Tavares fellow. So this whole experience down in Florida is going to be a bad one, a real bad one for not only Donald Trump, but for Naughta and Oliveira. I think we can probably bet that those two are going to flip. Now, they really don't have any choice. They don't have any choice at all. All right. Donald Trump said something on the Hugh Hewitt show. Now, who's Hugh Hewitt? He's a radical right, half-ass fucking reporter. He's been around for years, and he had Donald Trump on his show. Former President Donald Trump told conservative commentator Hugh Hewitt this week that he absolutely plans to testify in his own defense in the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. But legal analyst Ellie Meistel does not buy it for a second. Well, we've heard that before. The January 6th thing, he said, oh, yeah, I'd love to testify. I can't wait to testify. But as we know, he never fucking testified. He never was going to testify. Frankly, in this situation, if he was to testify, he'd get hit with another indictment. He would get hit with a charge for perjury. Now, Abby Phillips, who was the anchor on the show, said, now, if history is any indicator, don't hold your breath for Trump testifying, like that time he declined to testify in the E. Jean Carroll case, or the time he refused to testify in the January 6th hearing, or the time he declined to testify in the investigation of his real estate empire, and the time he refused to testify in the hush money case. Also, there's the time he wouldn't testify at his own impeachment trial, or the time he didn't sit with Robert Mueller, even though he said he would. So what Donald Trump says doesn't carry a lot of weight. He's a pathological liar. And frankly, if he did testify, it would be the most entertaining thing on TV. But if he did testify, it would be devastating to him in any case he has. Now, Phillips said, you see the trend here. Who is he kidding? Mistal said, not me. Look, Trump is a liar, so he is lying. The fact that he's lying, one of the reasons why he can't testify. If he testifies, he'll lie. He will catch himself another indictment, this time for perjury. And they told this joke, and you have to be old to remember it. And it's Joe Isuzu is less of a perjury risk than Donald Trump putting him on the stand. No lawyer who has been through, I would say, 3 months of law school would dare to put Donald Trump on on the witness stand. And that's absolutely true. There's no way that is going to happen. It's too much of a risk for the case and for Donald Trump himself. Now, we mentioned the E. Jean Carroll case here, and something interesting happened with that. Now, we know he had the first defamation case that he lost to the tune of $5 million. The day after, he goes out and defames her again. And then E. Jean Carroll and her lawyer go to the court and say, we'd like to amend that penalty and add to it, given the fact that he just went out and did it again. So that amendment is coming up sometime soon. I'm not sure when exactly. But there was another defamation trial. I think this came up before the first one that it's already been completed. And so now this one is in the works. And basically the evidence and the witnesses are all the same from the one that's been tried. So E. Jean Carroll's lawyer asked for a summary judgment. Now, what that means is because it's so similar, instead of going through the trial and the jury and all this shit, they just want to have the judge make a judgment. And the judge did make a judgment, basically said that, yeah, he's guilty. We'll have a trial in January, but in that trial isn't about guilt or innocence. He's already been found guilty in this summary judgment, and we're just going to spend the time deciding how much he's going to have to pay E. Jean Carroll. And I think in this one, she might be asking for $10 million. So if she got $5 million, the first one, they get to amend it to another $5 million. That's $10 million. If this one is $10 million, then we're talking $20 million. Donald Trump cannot help himself. In fact, he does nothing but hurt himself every time he talks. but you can't get Donald Trump to stop fucking talking. It's always been my contention that when he became president, if he knew how to just shut his mouth and just do the job, he would never be in any of these issues right now. And then since that time, when these issues came to light, the fact that he kept talking just made it fucking worse. He's done this to himself. E. Jean Carroll's already won the second defamation lawsuit. There's going to be an amendment to the first one. She may walk out of this with $20 million. Now, the question is, what's Donald Trump going to fucking say about it? Is he going to open his mouth again? Well, I bet you he will be opening his mouth. Maybe today we'll hear about things from Truth Social, because he's no doubt got the news now that he lost before he even fucking started again, and he's going to be fucking angry. I love this. As Muscles and Nursing would say, I love this for him. You see what I mean when I was talking about this earlier? So much is being piled on top of Donald Trump. He won't be able to survive. And I'm not suggesting he's going to die. I'm saying he can't survive all that's happening to him and still try to run for the presidency. If the 14th Amendment thing comes through, great. If it doesn't, it's just another thing that's hanging over his head and that he's worried about because we hear him talk about it on Truth Social. Donald Trump is getting buried. Now, we've got another guy. I talked about him yesterday. Another guy who was in the cult of Trump. And we're talking about Peter Navarro, that trade advisor who doesn't know shit about shit. I think on Tuesday, they had the jury selection. Yesterday, they had the opening arguments and also the closing arguments. It's fucking done. It was quick. And as I said, why wouldn't it be quick? He is being prosecuted for contempt of Congress. The contempt of Congress came from him not supplying subpoenaed documents and the subpoena for him to testify. He ignored the subpoenas. So when he goes to court, all you have to say is, Peter, did you give him the documents? No. Did you show up and testify? No. Okay, fucking guilty. And that's pretty much what's going to happen. Now, Peter Navarro is a heavy-duty member of the cult. This motherfucker is got some serious problems. Now, he may think, because he's whining about the money, it's going to cost me $1 million. I don't have that kind of money. I'm just a guy. But I think this particular trial may be the least of his problems. The absolute least of his problems. Because he was all in the mix with this plan to overturn the election, maybe overthrow the government. You remember he was talking about the Green Bay sweep, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we were going to do that. He pretty much laid out the plan for the attempt to overturn the election. He basically confessed on Ari Melber's show in on MSNBC. And so, excuse me, it looked like I was having a technical problem there, and I don't know. So if you saw a glitch, you know what the fuck was up. Anyway, we've got, what was I talking about? Ari Melber, him confessing. But what I really think is his problem may end up being that he may be implicated in the actual planning of the overturning of the election and all that shit. He may also get an indictment there. And if he gets an indictment there, this little contempt of Congress thing won't be jack shit compared to what's in store for him. He is kind of a pitiful guy. He really is nobody, but he loved being on TV, and like Donald Trump, he just could not fucking shut up. He could just not shut up. And he's still not shutting up, because when he's talking to the press afterwards, he's still insisting on the election was stolen. The fuck is wrong with him? I don't get it. I just don't fucking get it. These people will sacrifice their lives, their careers, everything for this dumbass fucking fake billionaire piece of shit. Now, as we're getting down to the late stages of the Rational Boomer podcast, I wanted to bring a story up. Not a story I would normally talk about. It's kind of a gross story, as a matter of fact. But when I read this story, I couldn't help but thinking about Donald Trump. This may be a precursor from an experience Donald Trump will have once he realizes he's getting convicted. But the other thing about this story is I don't know how the fuck it happened. I mean, it sounds crazy. If you're eating something right now, put it down. You're not going to be wanting to eat anything while I'm telling you this story. An incident involving diarrhea all the way through the plane caused a Delta Airlines flight to Barcelona to make an emergency landing last week. The Airbus 350 was forced to fly back to its location of departure at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, approximately 2 hours after takeoff, according to the flight tracking site FlightAware. The issue was reportedly a potential biohazard for those on board, and a spokesperson for the airline published a statement Tuesday evening seeming to confirm the report. Delta Flight 194 on September 1 from Atlanta to Barcelona returned to Atlanta because of a biohazard problem. A spokesperson from the airline said, "Our teams worked as quickly and as safely as possible to get our customers to their final destination. We sincerely apologize to our customers for the delay and inconvenience to their travel plans." The flight was reportedly delayed over 8 hours, but did ultimately make the trip to Barcelona, arriving a little after 5 p.m. local time on Saturday without further incidents. Oh, man. You know, you keep hearing about all this crazy shit on flights. My wife tells me stories about the things she deals with in customer service, and people are fucking nuts. But I've never heard this story before. I've never heard anything like this. It's a little crazy. How does that happen? How in the fucking world does that happen? And they were saying it was flowing down the aisle. What did this motherfucker eat? I mean, we've all had problems with that, but presumably the guy or the gal's got pants on, but still there was enough to flow down the fucking aisle. And I saw pictures after the fact, and it looked like a bomb had gone off in there. No doubt people were freaking out and moving around and trying to get away from. It's just a crazy story. But it reminded me of Donald Trump, since Donald Trump has this issue with being incontinent and wearing diapers and frequently shitting his pants. You got to wonder if they don't have some extra protection for Donald Trump when he finds out he's convicted. They might have a similar problem. But really why this caught my eye is because it reminds me of a story in my own life. And this is funny. My wife and I and my oldest son, whose birthday is today, went into a restaurant, I think in St. Paul. It's called Heartbreakers or something. It was a 50s themed restaurant. Now, my son was in a stroller as we go into this restaurant. And everything's going fine. He's little. He's maybe 2. He didn't know what the fuck is up. And my kids always had occasion to blow out diapers on a regular basis, usually at night when they were sleeping, not so much during the day. But on this day, we're going into this restaurant, we're going across to the table. And then all of a sudden, I notice that my son has one of these blowouts, and some of the excrement has fallen on the floor. Now, my wife is absolutely mortified by this. She's going, okay, here's the deal. You get him out of here, get his pants changed. I'll clean this up and try to not get noticed. I said, cool. I'm good with that because I'm fucking out of here. And we got the fuck out of there. But as I was getting to the door, and my wife was leaning down to clean up the mess, trying to do it covertly so nobody saw because she was embarrassed. She was mortified. As she was doing that, another little kid, a couple of tables down, had to be about 4 or 5. The kid screams out in the middle of the restaurant, "Mommy, look, that baby pooped on the floor." And there's my wife, embarrassed as hell, cleaning this up, trying to get out of there without ruining other people's meals and stuff. I mean, the shit you go through with kids, stuff like that happens. What can you do? Another time, my wife and I are in a restaurant, and this restaurant's kind of dark, and my son is there, about the same age, and everybody sits kind of close together. The tables are kind of close together, and I'm sitting across the table from my son, and my son looks at me and he goes, "Dad." I go, "What?" "Dad." "What?" He said, "Dad, I'm pooping." I go, "Dude, just keep it down. We got other people eating here." He goes, "No, I'm pooping right now." I go, "That's cool. You got a diaper on. Just settle down." He goes, "No, Dad, I'm pooping right now." And his face is turning red and all this stuff. And once again, my wife is embarrassed. Fortunately, for me, I just don't give a shit. I thought it was kind of funny, kind of cute that this little kid is announcing that he's moving his bowels while we're eating dinner. I think after that, we thought twice about going to restaurants with kids under 5. It never worked out very well. And then, well, it reminds me of another story. This one doesn't involve poop. You'll be happy to hear that. You can start eating again if you like. But one time, my wife and I and my oldest son, this is before my youngest son was born, we were in this Chinese restaurant, a well-known Chinese restaurant in the town that's no longer here. If you're from Minnesota, you might remember Nankin. And it was a great place, good food, all that stuff. And we're sitting there. My wife and I are sitting at the table, and my son is in the high chair, and he's got a spoon in his hand. Now, our waitress is of Chinese descent. I don't think she speaks English very well. But my son is sitting there pounding the spoon on the table, going, wow, 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 and he's kind of loud. So we're trying to calm him down, and he keeps doing it. He keeps pounding the top of his the top where he's going to eat, and he's kind of talking loud. So this waitress comes up, and I think she had all the best intentions, but she didn't have command of the English language. And she comes over and bends over and looks at my son, and she says, "Shut up, baby. Shut up. Shut up, baby." Now, if you knew my wife, I would say this has to do with any other woman that has a child. Somebody you don't know comes up and tells your child to shut up. Well, there's going to be a fucking fight. Fortunately, my wife isn't violent in nature, but she had some things to say. And I felt sorry for this poor woman. I don't think she understood what she was saying, but my wife took serious offense to it. My goodness. Anyway, it's a different way to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast, but we are going to wrap things up. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.